Hi students, Mr. McDonald here. I just wanted to post a quick video to assist you with one of the more complicated texts that we're viewing and studying in Unit 2, Theology. This is the Summa Theologica, and this is the kind of the magnus opus of Thomas Aquinas. This is one of his greatest accomplishments. In fact, I believe that he died before he accomplished it, but to give you an idea of how important this text is, Thomas Aquinas is considered like the master of all medieval knowledge, at least Christian knowledge. So, all of the ancient philosophy and theology kind of culminated with this man's work. And he attempted to make a text that covered all of the theological and philosophical arguments of all time at his point into one text. So obviously it was huge and it was a huge endeavor. And there's a lot of really great theory in there and information in there. Although now it's kind of considered old philosophy and old theology, it's still quite applicable today in many different reasons and for many different causes. Now, again, this is like 13th century, so it's very old. And so it's also very philosophical, but we're going to get into it. Just another quick note, the way that he formulated it is he presents his arguments, then he presents kind of counters that most people would think, and then he defeats those counter arguments. This led to a school of education kind of called scholasticism. So whenever you hear something referred to as scholastic, it's really kind of referring to this didactic method, this educational method, which worked really great for high level students. The reason I'm asking you guys to read this and study this, one of the reasons is obviously it pertains to our theology unit and it's discussing some of the proofs for God's existence in the more classical sense. But I wanted you guys to study this because I want to get you used to reading primary sources. A primary source is essentially a source that comes directly from its origin. So, for example, if you wanted to write a paper on Abraham Lincoln, you can use a primary source or a secondary source. A primary source is a speech that Abraham Lincoln would have written. You can cite the speech or talk about the speech. It came directly from him. That's a primary source. A secondary source is really a person off to the side or a source off to the side that wrote about that person. So let's say that you use research another person did on Abraham Lincoln for your research paper. That would be a secondary source. And reading from primary sources, although secondary source might be able to break it down, a primary source, you can really get a sense of that person's era and that time and the important things to them and how they spoke and how they reasoned. So as you guys become more academic and get older, and as your research becomes more pure and better, your research papers, especially if you're going to college, you're going to want to look at primary sources um, more often. So the assignment starts with secondary sources because I'll be the secondary source for you. Or actually, this is an article, isn't it? Um, in this article, we talk about who Thomas Aquinas is. And in a secondary sense, we do a summary of the 5 arguments for God. Now, this is a little complicated, but you guys can read these on your own. These are just summaries. But what I want to do is specifically help you with the primary source. So on your homework assignment, if you guys will have annotated all the way through up into point 5, and then we can go to Thomas Aquinas, the Summa Theologica, the first part, A, question 2, article 3. Very organized, isn't he? Okay, so this is a translation, obviously. So let's see how they did. The existence of God can be proved in 5 ways. The first, so annotating, you'd write, number 1 here. Most and more manifest way is the argument from motion. It is certain and evident to our senses that the world and some things are in motion. Obviously, you recognize things move. Now think physics, right? Now, whatever is in motion is put in motion by another, for nothing can be in motion except it is in potentiality to that towards which it is in motion, whereas a thing moves insomuch as it is in act. So there are two ways of seeing kind of energy or movement. There's potential, and then there is actual. Potential means that it literally can move or has the potential to move for some reason. Actual means that it's literally moving. So if we take my eyeglass thing and I put it on my hand, because gravity is a force, if somehow this was tipped over on my hand, it would move. But right now, it could potentially move. At the point at which it does move, it actually moves. Some things can't potentially move per se, they're fixed, right? But this can. It goes from potential to actual. Oh, great. Now it's on the floor. Okay. Understand that's what he's talking about when he says potential and actual. For motion is nothing less than the reduction of something from potential to actual. So it goes from one to the other. But nothing can be reduced from potentiality to actuality except by something in a state of actuality. Thus, that which is actually hot, as fire, makes wood, which is potentially hot, to be actually hot, and thereby moves and changes it. So, in order for this to move, something else, like my hand, will have to move it. Think. This is the potential, this is the actual. The actual moves the potential, and he uses fire as an example. Um, a log or wood is potentially on fire, but not really on fire, not actually on fire. But if you apply fire to it, it becomes actually on fire. What he's getting at is something caused it to be on fire. Okay. Now, it is not possible that the same thing should be at once in actuality and potentially in the same respect, potentiality in the same respect, but only in different respects. This is the third law of logic, which we already discussed. Um, it's no middle ground. It's either or. Either it is on fire or it is not on fire. For that which is actually hot cannot simultaneously be potentially hot, but it is simultaneously potentially cold. It is therefore impossible that in the same respect and in the same way a thing should be both the mover and the moved, that it should move itself. So this thing cannot be the actual and the potential. It cannot move itself, obviously. In other words, there is no Big Bang. But anyway, the Big Bang came much later. Anyways, so therefore, whatever is in motion must be put in motion by another. If that by which it is put in motion be itself put in motion, then this also must needs be put in motion by another, and that by another again. And this cannot go into infinity. And I'm not sure if I said this in every class, but you have what's called a infinite regress. That means you go backwards by cause to infinity, and there's never a cause. Some people argue that it could circle around, but that doesn't really make sense either in a cyclical way. So this cannot go to infinity because then there would be no first mover and consequently no other mover, seeing that subsequent movers move only in so much as they put in motion by the first mover. So if there's a mover, this is the mover, moves the potential to actual. It's always moved by a first mover. Something has to move something to get it moving. If this sounds sort of like the cosmological argument, it is. It's by causation, right? As the staff moves only because it is moved in motion by the hand. Therefore, it is necessary to arrive at a first mover, put in motion by no other. And this everyone understands to be God. So who was the first one to push something in motion? It can't make itself move unless it's God. God's the only one by definition that could do something like that. So what was the first cause? What was the first mover? So this is kind of an argument in physics, right? Primitive physics. Second, hopefully you guys get that one. Second one. The second way is from the nature of the efficient cause. So this is very much like the mover example, except for this is about the cause of things to exist. In the world of sense, we find that there is an order of efficient causes. There is no case, neither is it indeed possible, in which a thing is found to be the efficient cause of itself. For it would be prior to itself, which is impossible. So I didn't cause myself to exist because I would be prior to myself, which is impossible. Things cannot cause themselves to exist. Only something else can cause another thing to exist. Now, in efficient causes, it is not possible to go on to infinity because in all efficient causes following in order, the first is the cause of the intermediate cause, and the intermediate is the cause of the ultimate, whether the intermediate cause be several or only one. Now take it away. Now to take away the cause is to take away the effect. So there's the first one, and then there's these intermediate ones, and then there's the ultimate, which is the one that you're seeing now. But there has to be a beginning. But if in an efficient cause it is possible to go on to infinity, there will be no first efficient cause, neither will be an ultimate effect, nor any intermediate efficient causes, all of which is plainly false. So things don't go on to infinity, and they don't start from zero, or they don't start themselves. Therefore, it is necessary to admit a first efficient cause to which everyone gives the name of God. So something had to cause all things. This is the cosmological argument. What caused the universe to exist? What caused humans to exist, to be born? Two people make another human, two people make another human, all the way down the line. There had to be something that started everything. People naturally relate this to God. Third argument. You guys with me so far? I don't know how far are we into this video. Here we go. Third way is taken from possibility and necessity and runs thus. We find in nature things that are possible to be and not to be, since they are found to be generated and to corrupt, and consequently, they are possible to be and not to be. So for a human, you exist and then you cease to exist. For, like, let's say these glasses, they didn't exist, someone created them, they exist, and at some point they're going to break and disintegrate and the atoms are going to spread out through the universe or something. But they exist now. They didn't exist. They exist, and then they're not going to exist. Think about it in human terms. It's a little bit easier. But it is impossible for these always to exist, for that which is possible not to be at some time is not. Okay, let's read that again. But it is impossible for these always to exist, for that which is possible not to be at some point is not. Therefore, so in other words, there's nothing that exists forever that we know of. Therefore, if everything is possible not to be, then at one time there could have been nothing in existence. So, if everything that we can think of, it's possible for it not to exist, at some point there would have been nothing, right? Now, if this were true, even now there would be nothing in existence, of course, because that which does not exist only begins to exist by something already existing, right? Everything came from something else. Again, you have this order of operations, kind of cosmological argument. Therefore, if at one time nothing was in existence, it would have been impossible for anything to have begun to exist, okay? Because everything comes from nothing, or everything comes from something. So if there was nothing, nothing would still be. And thus, even now, nothing would be in existence, which is absurd. Therefore, not all beings are merely possible, but there must exist something, the existence of which is necessary. But every necessary thing either has its necessity caused by another or not. Now, it is impossible to go on to infinity in necessary things which have their necessity caused by another, and has been already proved in regard to efficient causes. So, going back to the last one with the infinite regress. Therefore, we cannot postulate the existence of some being having of itself its own necessity, and not having receiving it from another, but rather causing in others their necessity. All men speak of as God. So something had to exist that would cause other things to exist. There is no other option. Nothing can't make something exist. So the Big Bang's out, right? And this is way before the Big Bang. So it was already illogical. Something had to cause all things to exist, since we come into existence and out of existence. What is that? People naturally think that that's God. The fourth way is taken from the gradation to be found in things. Okay, now this is not an argument that we've talked about. This is a very medieval idea of the hierarchy of beings. So, among beings, there are some more and some less good, true, noble, and the like. But the more and the less are predicated of different things, according as they may resemble in their different ways something which is the maximum, as a thing is said to be hotter in accordance as it is more nearly resembles that which is hottest. So you have this let me pause right there. So what he's saying is there's like this value scale, right? There's things at one level and then they go to the other level. But the things that are hottest bring a comparison for the things that are cool. So he's saying that there's a scale, but it's also as far as things that exist. So there's things that exist in a primitive way, like rocks, and then there's, inanimate objects, and then there's things that kind of exist in a less primitive way, and they show complexity. Like let's say the solar system, or let's say an animal, a primitive animal. Let's say an amoeba, a one-celled organism, right? That has a little bit more complexity, but it doesn't have the complexity as, let's say, a squirrel. A squirrel has a greater complexity, so that would be higher on the scale. And then, of course, humans, the greatest rational beings in the physical world, exist, right? And then that's the kind of hierarchy he's talking about. So that there are something, so that there is something which is truest, something best, something noblest, and consequently something which is uttermost being. For those things that are greatest in truth are greatest in being, as it is written in Metaph 2. I don't know what that is, sorry. Now the maximum in any genus is the cause of all that genus, as fire, which is the maximum heat, is the cause of all hot things. Therefore, there must also be something of which to all beings the cause of their being, goodness, and every other perfection, and this we call God. So, if there's a hierarchy, which he's saying that there is, to being, we are not the top of it because we can kind of imagine things that are the maximum, like of all that we have. Like we have logic, but our logic can be flawed. We can make mistakes. We have love, but our love isn't perfect. We make failure in love, right? So he's saying that there must be something higher that we compare. What are we failing against? If humans are the maximum of all creatures, then everything we do is perfect, right? He's saying, no, we know we're not perfect because we are measuring ourselves up against something we know is perfect and we know exists above us. That's God. Does that make sense? Hopefully. You don't hear that argument a lot, but it's there. Fifth, it's kind of it's a derivative of what they call the ontological argument. All right, fifth and final one. You've made it this far. Congratulations. Fifth way is taken from the governance of the world. We see that things which lack intelligence, such as natural bodies, act for an end, and this is evident from their acting always or nearly always in the same way so as to obtain the best result. Hence, it is plain that not fortuitously but designedly do they achieve their end. So we can see in the creation of things that things were kind of created in natural bodies to do things and to do things with good results. So you have these two hands, you have a mind so you can use it, you have eyes so you can see. Obviously, there's kind of a design to how we're operating. There's no part of us that we look at and we're like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Why is that there, right? Now, whatever lacks intelligence cannot move towards an end unless it be directed by some being endowed with knowledge and intelligence. Let me read that again. Whatever lacks intelligence cannot move towards an end unless it be directed by some being endowed with knowledge and intelligence, as the arrow is shot to its mark by the archer. Therefore, some intelligent being exists by whom all natural things are directed to their end, in this being we call God. So, how do we know what we're supposed to do? We lack intelligence, but we're still moving forward. So, this is kind of like an argument from kind of like the moral argument, but it's more like a purpose argument. We're actually achieved in the end and we're designed to achieve that end. So it's also sort of an intelligent design argument. It's a little bit of a mix here. What did they call it in the summary? Argument from design, right? We're designed to work in a particular way, not by chance. So there's some kind of purpose at work. This means that like something of intelligence made us to work in a particular way. So it's kind of a teleological argument here, but it's also sort of a argument for purpose. So it's a mix. But anyways, classical. You guys are reading, centuries old material here that was the culmination of its time. So hopefully that made sense to you guys. Hope you get your homework assignment done, and I'll see you in class tomorrow. God bless.